Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. We're going to start from the beginning. Okay, just to make this simple. One thing I will say is this. I, for the longest time, actually have not seen right-wing commentators argue and bicker with each other on Twitter the way that I've seen this happen with left commentators. So for the longest time, I always said, like, you don't see Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro duking it out on social media. I stand corrected. Things have changed. So Ben Shapiro is not happy with Candace Owens. He feels that, well, let's get into it. Let's start with Glenn Greenwald's statement. So Glenn said that Tucker's interview of Candace Owens about Israel, about why Americans are so intensely connected to that country, about her dissent on bipartisan DC war policy, comes right after Ben Shapiro suggested that she should quit the Daily Wire. So here is this statement here from Ben Shapiro. Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means, quit. And that is in response to this tweet here from Candace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you. So this is coming from this issue here where Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro have a different opinion about Israel and Gaza. Ben Shapiro is obviously on the side of Israel. Ben Shapiro is a Zionist. He said a lot of Islamophobic things. That is not a surprise to any of you who've ever listened to Ben Shapiro. He said these kind of things against Black people too. Like he's a Zionist. Is what it is. So he feels like the U.S. government should help Israel defeat Hamas. Candace Owens, however, said that the U.S. government should not be involved in foreign affairs. Now, how is this different from Russia and Ukraine? When we were still in the height of the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, and there was more focus and interest on that war, Candace Owens said we should not be sending money to Ukraine. The U.S. government should not be involved in this event because this is not an American issue. That is abroad, yada, yada. So no intervention, no foreign intervention. Ben Shapiro also did not approve of the U.S. government sending money to Ukraine. So now what we're starting to see, and I had this discussion with Glenn Greenwald, actually, what we're starting to see is that some of the people who were against foreign intervention in reference to Russia and Ukraine are not against foreign intervention in reference to Israel and Gaza. And so now this is where Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro start to disconnect. So it has become somewhat heated to the point where at an event, Ben Shapiro was actually questioned about Candace Owens' decision and about her belief in reference to this conflict. And this is what starts to stir up things about the rumors of, well, maybe she should not be a part of the Daily Wire. So the Daily Wire is the network that Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, I think Dave Rubin might be a part of that or was a part of that at one point, Matt Walsh. So there's a segment of right-wing commentators that are a part of the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire also is not just about right-wing politics. They also produce movies. So the Daily Wire has a lot of money. And this is why I've told people before, when people say like, everybody, you guys are all just grifters. Nah, all the money's on the right. And I mean like on the right. Like the Daily Wire, they have a lot of money. So Ben Shapiro was at this event and he was questioned about it. Ben Shapiro slams Candace Owens for her behavior towards the Arab-Israeli conflict. Listen to this.
Yes, the question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
Okay, so he thought that her position in reference to this conflict has been disgraceful. And so some of the people in the audience are asking, should she leave the Daily Wire? Now, I want to show you this conversation here, because this is what I believe really upset Ben Shapiro. Here are the absolutely disgraceful remarks from Candace Owens that Ben Shapiro is furious over. Listen to this.
There are a lot of people in America that are sitting here going, okay, well, can you answer why Jews are so special? Because as white people in this country on university campuses, we are being taught that we are not allowed to have a voice. We have had to endure exactly what you're talking about, BLM. We've endured much worse than you have because it's in the actual textbooks. We are being told that we are systematically racist, that we are born wrong because of the color of our skin. And if we say anything, we'll lose everything. This is the typical experience on white campuses. So people, this is not whataboutism. This is like actually what we have been fighting for years. So it sort of arrived as, I think, for a lot of Americans, a surprise when they're saying, well, now that it's about Israel, which is something that's overseas, we need to, hand these university professors, we need to do something about this issue. Why weren't we trying to correct course on this issue? Why weren't donors pulling their funding out of these universities? Why weren't these same things being said for these last, I would say, 8 years of rampant BLM, white man can't do anything right, actively being taught in the classrooms? So there are people that are asking that question. Now, what I have...
Pause there. So first of all, as someone who worked in higher ed for over a decade, I can tell you that donors have been known to pull their funding from universities whenever they feel the university or there's a message coming from the university that's not on track, or whenever they feel that the enrollment numbers are not where they should be. They've done that. They've been doing that for years. You just didn't hear about it because it wasn't involving this issue with Israel and Gaza. But they have been doing that for years. In fact, when I worked at Boston University, when I was at the business school, Alan Questrom, it came up one time in a meeting that he did not want to renew his donorship to the university because he was not happy with the enrollment numbers. So donors, they've been known to pull their money. They've been known not to, renew their donation based on other issues. But again, like I said, if you weren't working in higher ed, you just didn't hear about it because it wasn't over an international conflict.
Said is that explicit calls for genocide, which was stunning to me to see that in Congress, are completely wrong. It is frankly crazy. I have not weighed in on the IDF's response in the same way that I have consistently said through every war, Ukraine and Russia, I don't want to be involved. I have said I don't want to be involved in Israel and Palestine, all these conflicts. My consistency seems to offend people, right? But I haven't made a single tweet or a single comment on IDF's response in Palestine. I haven't said a single thing about that. I have...
Pause. So this is something I will say that she has been consistent on. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a reason for this as well. What you do have to understand is that Candace is allowed to be consistent on it because there is a base that she has for that, and that's not going to hurt the Daily Wire. So this feud that Ben Shapiro has with Candace Owens is not like all of a sudden Candace's supporters are going to be like, oh God, we're not going to watch you anymore. We're not going to support you anymore, Candace. No, that's not the case. She feels comfortable keeping and holding on to that consistency because she already knows she has a base that will support it. So there appears to be some type of a split on the right where there are some that are still a part of the anti-interventionist approach, worry about America first, in reference to Ukraine and Russia and continuing on. And it also appears that there's another segment of the right that it was against funding Ukraine, but now that the country switches to Israel, feels that the US government should support them. So I think Ben Shapiro is on that side, and Candace Owens is on the side where she says no intervention at all. So she is being consistent with her opinion about that. So I say this, This is the revealing moment. This is something that I talked about a couple weeks ago, where once you change the country, people start to shift. If it's not Israel, let's replace it with China. Okay, you'll find that some of the same people like Tulsi Gabbard, who said we should not be giving funding to Ukraine, and she spoke at the anti-war rally. Once you change that country to China, Tulsi feels differently. Yes, we need to go after them. They're terrible. Once you change it to Israel, she feels differently. Yes, I support the U.S. giving Israel everything that it needs. So there's a split that is happening on the right now. And we've talked about splits on the left before, but now there is a split on the right. Let's continue.
Said it is always sad when a child dies. And the lack of humanity that I have seen from both sides has been very troubling for me. But to say that I have to weigh in and suddenly wave an Israeli flag and say things that, because you decide that you get to use my platform because it's personal to you, how is that fair to people? How is that fair? And then to go a step further and to suggest that it might be anti-Semitic, which is basically silence is violence, as a leftist tactic, to me feels very extreme.
This is not about a geopolitical dispute between Israel and Palestine. This is about an ideological mission to rid the world of Israel and the Jews. That's what I think people misunderstand.
Yeah, well,
I don't think, no. So the thing is, when they talk about the charter, and JB and I actually talked about this earlier, when they talk about the charter, in the charter, it does not say they want to get rid of Jewish people. The Palestinian people want their land back. They don't want to be, what is happening now, where they're basically remaining in an open air prison. Like, they don't want that. They want to have self-determination. They want to have some type of freedom. And another thing you have to remember, notice Candace brought up the children. And this has been the touching moment, I think, for a lot of people that has made people say, oh, hell no, stop the fire now. We need a ceasefire. It's the images of the kids, the videos on Twitter, the videos, or some of them that make it on Instagram, the videos on TikTok. It's the pictures of the children. Similar to the way that the pictures of the children that were in cages during Trump's presidency was able to win over people in the United States as well and tell them, oh God, I'm not going to support Trump because kids are in cages. Interestingly enough, though, those kids are still in cages under Joe Biden, and nobody talks about that now anymore. That's the political aspect of it, right? Only call it out when it's not your party. But it reminds me of what happened with the war in Vietnam. And the war in Vietnam, one of the reasons why there were so many protests in the United States against it is because people here were able to see the images of the children being bombed, being killed. When they showed the casualties of war on national television, they have not done that since the Vietnam War. But we have social media today, so people are able to see it a different way. But the children images is one of the things that's been making people call for a ceasefire.
Jews live very comfortably in the United States of America, so they're not going to be, obviously Jews
lived comfortably in Germany before World War, before Germany too. They did. Doctors, lawyers,
I really struggle when people start using, things that have happened in the past that are abhorrent, like slavery, to say that, like, if this doesn't happen, then slavery is going to be back, or if this doesn't happen, then it's going to be the Holocaust too. I think there's a lot more meaningful chatter and discussion that we can have. We don't have to resort to that kind of,
History repeats itself if you forget it. You have to be conscious, and Jews especially. Unfortunately, I'm a grandchild of all four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors.
So what do you make of the Holocaust survivors and the Jewish people in New York City that are protesting on behalf of Palestine? That's a great question.
I think that there's a very strange, bizarre, it's the same people that you would condemn as the white people who bowed down to BLM protesters, who hate themselves and feel a certain sense of guilt.
Let me pause here. Is that true? Is it true that white people who supported BLM protests, that they hate themselves? Because that's not what I felt at all. I didn't get the impression that they hated themselves. To me, I look at that as a form of solidarity. They were standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. The protesters that are part of organizations like Jews for Peace, Jewish Voices for Peace, they're all Jewish. They're standing in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. Those people don't hate their self. So you want to tell me that Medea Benjamin hates herself? I don't think so. You know? So this is one of those stereotypes that you may hear from people every now and then, is where they'll bring up this thing like, if you're actually fighting for someone else's cause, then you must hate yourself. And it goes on both sides. Some people have said the same thing to Black people who are actually protesting for the Palestinian struggle. They've said, oh, other Black people have said, you guys must hate yourself. And I'm like, do you not understand that Malcolm X fought for the Palestinian struggle? That Nelson Mandela fought for the Palestinian struggle? Do you not understand that our revolutionary leaders stood in solidarity with the Palestinian people? You see, this is why we have to study history for ourselves. We can't just accept the history that's in the textbooks in school that they teach us, because that is whitewashed history. They never tell you how brutal it actually was during those times.
Feel a certain sense of, I think a lot of the ideologies on the woke left, to the extent that things are good and prosperous and virtuous, they condemn as bad. And the things that are broken, morally and depraved, they see as good.
Define good and bad. Right, guys? Define good and bad. What's good? Let me ask you a question. Is it good to occupy people? Is it good to oppress people? Is it good to obliterate children? Is it good to pursue a genocide? Are those good things? Those are not good things. Those are bad things. And if you think those are good things, I'm looking at you a certain way, because that right there tells me that you don't value those people.
Is the lens by which the far left views things. And I think these Jews that happen to be politically far left and maybe are not that connected to their Judaism, or are maybe culturally Jewish, but don't have a strong Jewish upbringing. Not to say that politics and being a Jew go hand in hand with the same political identity. But my point is, just like the white people who in mass were bowing down and feeling guilty about themselves simply for being white, or people who feel guilty for being successful, or the anti-capitalists who say anyone who has something is necessarily bad. Some people buy into that sort of masochism of hating themselves to gain favor with people who want their destruction.
So first of all, he's exaggerating. First and foremost, when he says the anti-capitalists that say anyone who has something is inherently bad, that's not what we say. What we say is that there is not an even or equal distribution. What we say is that the people don't control and own the means of production. What we say is that we have a capitalist system in this country, which is very unfair. And there's the people at the top, which is a very small group of people that are making a lot of money and exploiting everybody else. So he's exaggerating. And another thing I want to add as well, there's a difference between Judaism and Zionism, but he's talking about it as though it's the same thing.
So would you say that in order to be a Christian, a Catholic, you have to support the Vatican? Like, you can't be a Jewish person that doesn't support the state of Israel. Is that what you're implying? Yeah, well, because I have Jewish friends that are pro-Israel, and I have Jewish friends that say that they just do not support Zionism at all, and that they think that the creation of the Israel state is something that is political and has nothing to do with actually the Jewish faith at all. And
you guys know this is bad, right? You guys know this is really bad, because again, like I said, she's on the right. And so she's speaking from personal experience. So she's telling him, like, I do have friends on both sides. So this is not good. I don't think this conversation went the way that he thought it was going to go.
So I listened to both of those sides. I try to hear both of those voices. And I don't think having a different perspective makes any person less Jewish. And I think it's been problematic to hear, and this is not you, this isn't a criticism towards you, when they say, well, to even have that perspective makes you not Jewish, because it's so reminiscent for me of me saying I'm a Black conservative. And they say, even to be a Black Republican, it's
Of course.
Yeah. So this was not oh my God. I really don't think this went the way that he thought it would go. And there's more to, I want to show you this as well, because she also came after Nikki Haley for this same issue. Watch this.
Talking about BLM, we've endured much worse than you have because it's in the actual.
Oh, sorry. So Candace Owens said here, it says Candace Owens just endorsed Nikki Haley for president of Israel. I kid you not. Watch this.
Well, I am here today to endorse Nikki Haley for president of Israel. I think she's earned that. I think Bibi Netanyahu is going through a very bad time right now. Support for Israel has virtually collapsed socially. If you're paying attention to the trends and you're paying attention to what people are watching, you're paying attention to the protests. And the one person that I think is capable of getting it back is Nikki Haley, with enough money from foreign interest lobbies. So there it is, guys. I'm endorsing Nikki Haley, president of Israel. Well,
I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. Because it's like, at some point, it's like, are you running for president of the United States? Or are you running to be prime minister of Israel? Like, which country, what are you standing with here? Which country are you standing with? Are you standing with the United States? Or are you standing with Israel? So yeah, Nikki Haley, that was a good example to point to there. That was very interesting. Now, she also, I want to make sure I bring this up as well. She also had an interview with Tucker Carlson about this very same issue. Because I got to say, like, Ben Shapiro, I don't think you're winning this right now. I think Candace Owens is winning this. I'm sorry. But I think she is winning this argument because she is remaining consistent, whereas you're not. And we got to ask this question. When people say no intervention abroad, no American dollars going to other countries abroad, does that mean at all, indefinitely? Or does it only mean with certain countries? And these are the things we need to start asking. So I want to bring up part of this interview that she had with Tucker Carlson, and shout out to Tucker Carlson for adding timestamps. Because I did not listen. I was like, honey, I didn't have time to go through all of this. So let's start from the beginning where he says Candace is attacked even when she's right. And then we'll get to the Ben Shapiro comments. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Astronomer, and commanded him to stop saying that the earth revolves around the sun. Shut up, they said. Everyone knows that's wrong. And you're a bad person for saying otherwise. That's a well-known story, of course, and we laugh about it now 400 years later because the authorities were completely wrong. Galileo is a hero. They are fools. And we explain this by pointing out that they were religious nuts. They were superstitious. Nothing like that could ever happen now. But it turns out the one constant in human history is human nature. And not only does it happen now, it happens more than ever. Watch Candace Owens get widely attacked, not by one person, but by everyone for being right.
People like Candace Owens and others have been flagrant at putting out disinformation into the public sphere.
The top performing post of the week was this post by Candace Owens, a far right-wing commentator and a favorite on Fox, denigrating George Floyd. It just shows how this website is a radicalization engine.
You do have this sort of parade of MAGA world that are parroting Russian talking points.
Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Tulsi Gabbard, I think somewhere along the line, they don't believe this, but they think that it's in their interest to say these things. These people are almost collaborators.
That Candace Owens video was the top video on Facebook this past week, and she's saying all sorts of things about George Floyd and denying any systemic racism problems. And so there's a deeper fundamental issue with what the Facebook algorithm and all social media algorithms, what kind of content they reward.
Others don't.
So I want to pause here for a second in reference to the systemic racism issue, and then we're going to get to the Ben Shapiro comments where he comes in here, I think right about there. So listen, Candace Owens is a very intelligent woman. She knows how to work her brand. What do I mean by that? Candace Owens actually came from the Obama era. She used to be a liberal. Now, I'm not here to praise and promote Obama. I think we all have learned a big lesson from that, that particular presidency. But I will say that Candace Owens, I believe, realized that there was more money on the right. She may have had her issues with Obama and liberalism and the left in general. That may be true. But I also think that she realized that she can make a lot more money if she were to swing over to the conservative side of things. And she was correct, right? She has written multiple books. She's a part of the Daily Wire. So she is making a lot of money. And the reason why I point this out is because of this. When she pointed out the incident about George Floyd, and she talked about the fact that systemic racism isn't really a thing, it's really interesting coming from her. And why do I say that? I say that because Candace Owens actually sued her school board when she was in high school for racism, and she won. And not only did she win, but the NAACP was actually part of her case. So it wasn't just Candace Owens by herself suing the school board. She partnered with the NAACP, and they represented her, and she won over $30,000. So that was when Candace Owens was in high school in Connecticut. If you don't believe me, look it up. So this idea, when she says that she doesn't believe in systemic racism, I don't think that that's true. I think that is fake. I think that's Candace saying what she needs to say to appeal to people on the right so she can continue to cash those checks. I'm just keeping it real. So she's very smart. So she knows what she's doing here. She would not stay on this course of having this consistency in reference to no intervention abroad if she knew that her entire base would turn on her. She's not going to abandon her cash cow. So they get into this part here. Let me pull this up. Let me come back out. Twitter is a mess with these videos sometimes. But let's get to the Ben Shapiro part, which is 427, right about there. There we go.
And speaking of, so I was out of the country yesterday and didn't have adequate internet access on the plane to really follow this. And I don't understand the context exactly, but the internet was dominated yesterday by video of Ben Shapiro, who you work with at the Daily Wire. I think it's fair to say attacking you. Here's the video. I just want to get your reaction to it.
Yes, the question is about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. Yeah, she still works for my company. And I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
So maybe there's a point in the video where he explains what exactly you did wrong and how you were wrong. I haven't seen it. But to call somebody, quote, absolutely disgraceful, particularly a coworker, seems like a pretty big step. What? And I really don't know the background here. What is that about?
You know, there isn't much of a background. I saw the video when everybody else saw it when I woke up.
No one warned you about it.
Nobody warned me about it. It looks like maybe he didn't know he was being recorded. It looks like it was some sort of a private event. I got no clarity on the issue that he was particularly speaking on. And in what was said, I can't respond to it beyond what he's saying because it's just ad hominem attacks. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's not, we disagree or I don't think she's correct or maybe she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can't respond to it on a level of intellect because there's nothing that he has expressed in that, at least in that short clip, that he fundamentally disagrees with in terms of what I said. But I will say that I'm not going to respond with the same ad hominem attacks. Yes. I don't think it helps further discussion. And if that was me that was caught on a video saying that about colleagues that I work with, I would be embarrassed. So I think that the video speaks more to Ben's character than it speaks to mine.
Is he texting?
Let's pause here for a second. So this is an important thing to think about. They are coworkers. They do work together. It's not like they just have a YouTube show. Like they actually work together for the Daily Wire. And Myra's mom, I was going to bring this up as well. She also said in this interview that Ben Shapiro is not her boss and he doesn't do the firing. She does say that in this interview. And I thought that was an interesting point to bring up because I think some people did assume that she works for him. She doesn't work for him. So let's go on here.
You to apologize or explain or anything?
No, nothing. I haven't heard a single word. It just was sort of something that he said. And you know what? Ben and I have many disagreements, so I don't think that that's particularly something that's interesting. We disagreed on the COVID vaccine. We disagree on Ukraine and Russia. He has taken virtually every stance that has been the opposite of mine on every issue over the last 5 years. So I don't think that that's particularly remarkable.
Vaccine. Really, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he was pro the COVID vaccine. I was anti the vaccine. You know, we were all idiots for not getting the vaccine. So that's totally fine. I am totally open to people having a difference in opinion.
Right.
I would hope that amongst colleagues that it would always be a civil disagreement. And I would never in a private event stand on a table and talk badly about Ben.
It's a little weird. So he was on the left on those three biggest issues of our time, is what you're saying?
He has converted his opinions. He's accepted responsibility. He said, I was wrong about the vaccine.
Oh, good.
He is, obviously pro pharma. His mom's a doctor. And I say to people, I'm very aware of my perspectives on big pharma, and I talk about it on my show openly. And I think that that's a tremendous credit to the Daily Wire that they allow a difference of opinions. But I would, as I said, hope that it would remain respectful and that you wouldn't throw your colleagues under a bus, so to speak.
I think
and it hasn't just been Ben Shapiro. It's also been Dave Rubin. I know she said this to Dave Rubin before on Twitter and was like, this is not the place for this. So she also says that she agrees that what's happening to the Palestinian people is genocide. So that's another thing that they disagree with. So that's a position particularly held more so on the left. So just FYI. Let me scoot forward just a tad bit. There we go.
Actually, right now, the acting CEO is Caleb Robinson. He's a wonderful person. He's worked very hard to be where he's at. We have a lot in common that we connect on. And so people don't get to see that, which is unfortunate. Ben lives in Florida. He's not a part of the day-to-day movement of the Daily Wire. The rest of the hosts have their shows situated in Nashville. So we see each other every day. We talk. There's great camaraderie. And there's actually more agreement. There's actually a lot of people that are, as I describe myself, just pro-America first. And I think I've been that way consistently throughout my political career.
Let me just pause for a second. So did you guys just hear what she just said? So apparently Ben Shapiro doesn't live in, I guess, wherever they are. I don't even know if she lives in Nashville, but I guess most of the hosts for the Daily Wire, this takes place in Nashville, Tennessee. She said that Ben Shapiro lives in Florida. So it sounds like Ben Shapiro is not around as much as the rest of them. But I think the important part from this is the fact that she made it clear that he's not her boss, so he can't fire her. And then two, it's really interesting too. Obviously, Candace Owens is pregnant and this is all going on. Like, girl, take a breather. But the other thing I'm going to add too is again, she said putting America first. So she's staying consistent with that issue. And I think she's starting to see that some of her colleagues are not.
Whether people agree with it or not in different moments is up for debate. But I don't want that video to become a reflection of how the Daily Wire works and the Daily Wire operates, because I have had a very good experience with the CEOs and, love Michael Knowles, love Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan. We all get along really great.
Well, it certainly speaks well of the Daily Wire then. So it's not, a clip like that on the internet, Candace Owens is out or something. Doesn't sound like that's what it means at all.
Yeah, no, it's a small group of people. We see each other every day. Right. Brett Cooper is another one who just joined about 2 years ago. She's great. She's up and coming. And there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. And that's why I think this video is even more unfortunate, because people see him as a figurehead, rightfully so, of the Daily Wire. And it allows people to, speak energy into the Daily Wire that isn't necessarily there because he's not there on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, that's very interesting. So if we could take 3 steps back and give us the context for this debate. How are you on different sides of it? I haven't heard you endorsing Hamas.
Well, pause really quick. How many of you thought that Ben Shapiro was actually the CEO of the Daily Wire? I think a lot of people think it's his thing or he's the one that's in charge. Now we know that's not the case. So now you're going to hear about her position in reference to Israel and Gaza.
No.
Well, I have not endorsed Hamas in any way. And yet people have interpreted things that I say, or actually rather things that I don't say. It's becoming very much reminiscent to me, and why I have used my platform to say this, of Black Lives Matter, where if you don't say anything, they say your silence is violence. If you say something and it's even-handed and it's nuanced, which is to say, during the times of Black Lives Matter, You might say, I don't support police brutality. Who does? I don't support racism. Who does? But also, I think that police are a crucial part of every city. We need to have policing in cities. So these calls to defund the police are immoral and wrong and are going to lead to more Black deaths.
This is where Candace does kind of mislead people a little bit when she says, I don't support police brutality. Who does? I don't support racism. Who does? There are a number of people that support racism, Candace. There are a number of people, but she knows that. She knows that. Like I said, she filed a lawsuit, a discrimination lawsuit against her school board.
People didn't want that nuance. When Black Lives, following George Floyd, there was no nuance. You had to explicitly say defund the police. You had to post a Black square. If you didn't post a Black square on Instagram, by the way, specifically on the platform of Instagram, and you maybe were busy that day, maybe you were in another country, maybe you just didn't log on to Instagram, you were accused of being a racist. I'm seeing a lot of that behavior right now when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a conflict that I have seen every single person, including myself, condemn what happened on October 7th. Because who wouldn't condemn terrorism? It's obvious who would not condemn innocent Israelis dying. But if you then say that it is also sad when an innocent Palestinian child dies, suddenly this is pro-Hamas, or you need to say, even when you're talking about how sad it is that a child dies, you need to button that statement by saying, but that child was a human shield. That's not going to be my response. First off, as a mother, that's not going to be my response as somebody who is about to give birth. When I see these images of children involved on both sides of the conflict, I've pointed to the people that are mocking dead Israeli children and said that they are horrific. I am even keel on this matter, and yet people think that you need to be extreme. So people that have become more radical and extreme are perceiving a moderate stance as not enough. And
because I was about to say you don't.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and stop it there. You can watch the full interview of that on Twitter. But you heard what she had to say there in reference to the children. She said, like, no, this is not okay at all. And I think a lot of us knew where Ben Shapiro stood on this particular issue. This is not something that he's been quiet about. He is a Zionist, and so I think for Candace, I'm pretty sure she probably knew where he stood on this issue too. But I guess for her, she's just like, how can you not see that this is not okay? That these kids dying, that this is not okay. How can you not see that? And see what happens is now some people are going to label her and say, oh, she's trying to cater to the left wing now. Now she's trying to move to the left. When I look at it this way, for me, just take the politics out of it and you see the images of the children, I got a problem with that. Regardless, whether it's a Republican presidency or a Democrat presidency, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with over 11,000 people being killed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think the Daily Wire would remove Candace Owens. I think it would be kind of weird if she wasn't a part of it anymore. It's just a bunch of dudes. Just a bunch of dudes. She does have a base and she does have a lot of followers, and they probably would not be too happy with that. Shirley says also Americans were boots on the ground, and their deaths, in addition to civilians, pressured LBJ to bow out. That's a good point, Shirley. Thank you, Sparky. Obama put the kids in cages in the first place. Greg Bruce says, I endorse Nikki Haley for president of Ugly. Interesting. Thank you, Stop Sniffing Kids. The USA is a shell company for money laundering. Thank you, Allie. Sabby, you should look up Dr. Norman Finkelstein tweets about Ben Shapiro and the Israeli government. They are hilarious. I've been seeing those. I know. Yeah, Norma's been killing it on Twitter. Shout out to Roger Meadows for being a member for 7 months. If anyone knows about manufacturing consent, it is Malcolm Nance. And thank you, Frank. Candace really talks fast like Ben, but y'all right. She really knows how to manipulate her boss, her base. Yeah. I mean, listen, she's not going to say something that's going to turn her entire base away. She ain't stupid. All right.